Hasn't come up
Yeah.
for mine yet. I
No,
think maybe, but
I
that's
think
all
we're
right.
here.
You think we're here? All right. Well, then welcome to Bear Era. If we're here, you're here. We're talking Chicago Bears again this week on Bear Era. We're going to talk a little bit about the, shall we say, improbable game versus the Giants and the next game coming up against the Minnesota Vikings, which seems to be a much more winnable game than maybe we thought it was going to be when we were looking at it earlier in the schedule or the calendar, or maybe even all the way back to the summer. Things haven't gone exactly as expected, but we'll hear about that in Northwatch as well, because we'll bring you Northwatch again this week live in the show. And Kieran, how are you now that the Bears just sort of keep doing this? Are you getting used to this at all?
Kind of. It's been it's been crazy because just the way this has worked out the last couple of weeks, I've been either at my mom's at the beginning of the game, so driving home to get my son to bed, and missing about like 10 or 15 minutes of the game and seeing the chaos like online, but then catching up myself and being like, it's not quite as bad as what people are trying to make it out to be. It's been an interesting one, but this weekend was even nicer because my brother-in-law is a New York Giants fan, so that would have been a tough loss because there was a little bit of back and forth the days coming up to that game, and yeah, the conversation since has been completely different. It's been more about a certain head coach who's not in New York anymore, so it was thrilling, but it goes back to what I think I said this last week or maybe the week before. If the Bears have a chance to win at the end of the game and the ball is in Caleb Williams' hands, I have this quiet confidence that they're going to score. And more often than not, that's what happens. He's had 4 fourth quarter comebacks, 4 game winning drives in different situations, and has been a reason why the Bears ultimately have been able to win some of these games. The game against the Giants, if not for Caleb Williams, that offense is doing absolutely nothing because, oh my God, some of his playmakers did not help him to the point of on that last play, he probably could have passed to 1 or 2 receivers and he's like, nah, I'm doing this by myself. I'm scoring. And look, you give a lot of credit to him because it was a very difficult game for a quarterback. You could see he was frustrated with some of the drops, but he did not let that phase him when the time needed him, when it mattered most. He did what he needed to do for the Bears to win. And ultimately, when the season is over, the only thing you care about is how many games did my team win? Did they make the playoffs? And the Bears have put themselves in a position to where people are talking about them as being a playoff team in the NFC. We would have taken that at the start of the season. So we are in a good position. And as you said, games that maybe people thought weren't winnable at the beginning of the year, not quite so much right now.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. It's not only the Bears' success at the end of games and in close games and finding improbable ways to get late in the game scores, but also when we're talking about the Vikings, which we'll sort of lean towards in the second half, things haven't gone the way they wanted them to in Minnesota this year either. So again, when you look at those schedules in July, in August, even in September, in the first month of the season, and you say, "Oh, who's strong? Who's going to be there? Who's a game I think we can win, and who is a game I'm not so sure that the Bears are going to come out on top." Those things change. They change from week to week. They change from month to month. And they certainly change now 10 weeks into the season from where we thought they were, at the end of training camp. And the Bears are a team that is trending upwards right now. There isn't another way to say that. They are believing in themselves. They are getting stronger as they go along. Does it always look perfect? Absolutely not. And, Ben's the first to admit that. I need to improve. Some really nice quiet things are happening for the Bears. The offensive line is getting better. Like Jonah Jackson was bad for the first couple of weeks of the season. He looked like he might be cooked. And that's what happens sometimes. He had injury problems after he left Detroit, in Los Angeles. A lot of people said, oh, he's familiar with Ben. He'll help people get the system, but I'm not sure physically if as a player he's back. He's back, folks. Kind of like John Wick. He's back. He had a great game against the Giants. Giants, obviously, formidable defensive line. Jonah had a great game. Darnell Wright's been having good game after good game, just stacking them all year long. That right side is starting to look pretty formidable, which is great news. Joe Thuney has been a stalwart all year, didn't need to sort of come up from anywhere. He started at the top and he stayed there. We all know about the left tackle situation. We've talked about that quite a bit. Drew Dahlman's been pretty steady at center. There were some snaps last week that weren't great, but overall, so much better than what the Bears have had at center over the past couple of seasons. So that offensive line really coming together, and you can start to see Caleb just believe. There were several passes in this game against the Giants where he just stood in, his eyes never came down. He just knew he was going to get protection, which is so far removed from where he was last year. And if he has the ability to do that with his arm, it's great. And really the difference that you brought up is his legs, right? The escapability in this game was something else. There were several what should have been sure sacks, I believe, for probably 25 to 28 other quarterbacks in this league. Those would have been sacks. For him, they weren't. He has just a knack for sort of twisting his upper body around. He's incredibly strong in the lower half, always has been, and got himself out of some real predicaments, and then is able to get yards because he is a wily athlete in the open field. He can elude you. He can run through you. He can outrun you if he needs to. And his legs, between the escapability and the rushing yards, were the difference in this one. I mean, you said it. Make no mistake. He could have thrown the ball at the end. He said, no, I'm going to seal it with my legs. And there are not a lot of quarterbacks that could have done that either. There are mobile quarterbacks, there are fast quarterbacks, but there are very few with his combination of attributes. And it was the difference in this game for all the sort of garbage he's taken for not playing well earlier in the season, which has been overblown. There is no way you can look at this game against the Giants and think they would have won it without Caleb Williams at quarterback. And that's a pretty cool place to be as a Chicago fan, where you can point to the quarterback and go, nope, the quarterback is the reason we won this game. And Caleb is ascending to that. He seems to be getting more comfortable, not only in Ben's offense, but also in that role on the team as the guy people look to in crunch time to believe in. And he is there. We saw that in the locker room afterwards, got one of the game balls from Ben. This is a team that's starting to believe in itself, to believe in its quarterback, and strangely enough, despite everything else, believe in its offense. And that is not a place we've been. It's uncharted territory. And, are there things that need to get better? Absolutely. Like Zacchaeus had a terrible day. There's no other way to say it. He dropped more balls than he caught by far. And, it really does feel like might be time to shift Luther Burden in there. If he wasn't ready in the beginning half of the season, give him a shot now, because I doubt he's dropping all of those. So there are things to fix, but Roma Dunze bounced back this week. Colston Loveland stayed strong this week. The running game between Swift, Monagai, and again, Caleb, you have to count those rushing yards, was strong as well and kept them in this game to the point where they could win it at the end down the stretch. So really good game for the Bears on multiple fronts.
Yeah, you talk about the game balls, and the one thing that stood out to me was that Ben Johnson mentioned, I think it was in one of his interviews, that after they look at the tape that there might be some more that were given out on the Monday. I would be shocked if one of those was not going to Darnell Wright, because the performance level from him, I know obviously the clip has been shared around social media from the beautiful pass that ended up going to Colston Loveland, but the fact that he was, what's a nice way of putting this, owning Brian Burns with one hand, making him his, that is exactly what he did. And while that was the highlight play, it was a similar situation for most of the day, and that is coming up against the guy that has 11 sacks, leading the league. Should have had maybe one or two more against Caleb, but obviously Caleb played a really, really good game in evading it. But Darnell Wright is proving himself to be a top 5 to top 10 offensive tackle in the National Football League this year, and by God, did the Bears need it. You mentioned seeing Joe Thuney and seeing Jonah Jackson. Look, the one thing that I had coming out of that game, other than obviously Caleb and things like that, was on the offensive line, you get what you pay for. And for too long, the Bears were inputting guys at center, at guard for like $2 million a year. And this is the first time that they put a real emphasis on spending at that position, and you see the difference. A game that maybe Caleb Williams should have been sacked multiple times against one of the more dominant defensive lines. We said this last week. The Giants, in terms of statistically, the defense wasn't going to pop off the page, but that defensive line will be one of the best you'll come up against, just in terms of putting your quarterback under pressure. 0 sacks. What a big difference from last year, where you were coming up against average offensive line or defensive lines and giving up like 6 sacks and 5 sacks on a weekly basis. So you got to give all the credit to them. They're making, even though Caleb is adjusting to this offense and he is ascending, they're giving him the ability to learn while he's in there and not be under duress 90% of the time. I think we said this in the offseason. He was under pressure at 60 something percent of the time last year. I would imagine that has come way down. He looks more comfortable. There's a reason he's able to get some of these comebacks in the fourth quarter, because he trusts what he's seeing in front of him. He's trusting that he's going to have protection, and when it does break down, he's athletic enough to beat it, because he's not having to beat it every single play. So it is a welcome relief to see. Obviously, there were some weird things that happened in that game. Like, in a normal weekly game, you're probably putting up another like 60 or 70 yards passing for Caleb because of some of the drops. You're probably scoring another 1 or 2 touchdowns, like the Zacchaeus one. Like, I don't care how bad you're playing, 100 times out of 100, that needs to be a touchdown. Like, it hits you in the hands. There was times that Caleb was delivering the ball to the chest plate of some of his receivers, and they were dropping it. I think officially they had something like 6 or 7 where it was like obvious drops, but you go back to the tape, you can probably count like 10 or 11, which is just not normal. It doesn't happen on a weekly basis. Luckily, it happened on a week where the Bears were able to climb their way back to win. That can't happen when you come into your division. It can't happen at some of these games coming up. They need to be much better. And as you said, adjustments will need to be made on offense, because the plays are there to be made. Like, there was some run plays where you saw what could have been. Again, the limitation of the running game is being that kind of vision from DeAndre Swift at times, where it kind of makes you like, when you watch the replay, it gets you a little bit mad when you see it, because you're like, it was right there and they miss it. Where I wasn't particularly happy was that Kyle Monangai, after having such a good week the previous week, gets 7 rushes. Like, to me, like, I know that DeAndre Swift is the quote unquote RB1 on this team, but so was Chuba Hubbard for the Carolina Panthers. Yep. And now that's Rico Dowdle. And I would like to see, if you're not going to just hand it off to Kyle, who has, even in those 7 snaps, looked good, I would like to see it more even, to giving him more of an opportunity, because I think you can get more out of the running game than they're currently getting. And look, they still got 80 yards from Swift, but there could have been more, and it could have made your offense flow a little bit better. But again, it's tough when your receivers are dropping passes. Like, when that happens, it stalls offensive drives and ultimately leads to you not scoring as many points. And that's what happened. Obviously, DJ Moore going out during the game, that didn't help either. But you saw towards the end, and when it mattered most, guys like Luther Burden stepped up. Colston Loveland stepped up. You're seeing some of the young guys on this team that may not have the premier roles straight away now. I think Colston Loveland is kind of ascending into that way where he's slowly taking over from Cole Kmet if you actually look at it. And he's looked very, very good doing so. But it's nice to see. I would like to see Luther Burden more involved because what I like about him is he's really assured he knows what he's supposed to do. And he's catching the ball, and it's very difficult to take him down, and you wouldn't think it because he doesn't look like the biggest guy out there, but he's tough to get down. And you saw that with his catch at the end where he made another like 12 yards after the catch, and it's not like there was a load of space. He was trying to break through two guys, but he did a really good job. It'd be nice to see him. It doesn't have to go from like whatever it was, 13 or 14 snaps to like 35. Like, it doesn't need to be that. It just needs to like gradually increase his workload to the point of where you get to the end of the season and you're like, okay, he's bona fide our number 3 wide receiver, or you feel good that if you had to let go of DJ that he could take over that role, and you just bring in another receiver to take up the number 3 or number 4 role, and things keep working like that. But yeah, you got to give a lot of credit to the offensive line. You got to give a lot of credit to some of those guys down the stretch that did make plays. And then obviously it goes to Caleb Williams, because without the way they played at the very end of that fourth quarter, I think the conversation might be very different, because it was ugly for 3.5 quarters, both offense, defense, and special teams. But there was individuals that kind of pulled the Bears over the line. Obviously, the key one is Caleb Williams on offense, but if we wanted to shift to defense, and I think CJ Gardner-Johnson been here 10 days, and
Yeah.
I know we talk about Caleb Williams, but really the turning point of the game was the fumble, and he does that, and momentum. It just seemed like it just switched instantly, and it seemed like when that happened, the belief came back to the Bears sideline, and from there they didn't really let up, and that's kind of what changed in that game for me.
I don't disagree. CJ has played exceptionally well, and he typically does when he arrives fresh in an environment. It's that he wears out his welcome a little bit over time, but I don't know that he's even going to have enough time this season to do it. I wouldn't put it past him. He seems to be able to do it at every stop, but right now he is making impact, and not just this last week. The first week he was there, in terms of he'd been with the team a few days and had sacks, had, PBUs. It is really good to see. The Bears needed it in the worst way. Guys are not healthy in the secondary yet, or fully healthy, and they're not going to be for a while. The comments today from Ben were, I'll call them evasive, but that's not a shot at Ben. Coaches need to be that way about injuries, because look, everybody heals at a different timeline, but he was not going to put a number of days until Jalen's back, or, whether or not they were going to put Kyler on IR. We don't know. When those guys come back, the secondary will be even stronger having CJ in it. So it's not a bad thing up until then, and it's not a bad thing after then. It's not a sort of double up wasted move. But there's a lot to look forward to with this team, and it does feel like they're just sort of getting better with the pieces they have. You talked about Colston Loveland's shift in the passing game. Cole Kmet has been focusing more on the blocking game, and he's been up and down as a blocker over his entire tenure in Chicago. Feels to me like when he focuses on it, he's made some really good blocks over the past few weeks. And it's not that we've never seen him make good blocks, but we've seen him make good blocks and then make terrible ones. Seems like that consistency is getting better, and that's important when you can count on a guy in a certain play to execute a certain role and get it done and not whiff. That's a big deal in Ben's offense. Get that defender accounted for, get him on the ground, get him out of the way. And Kmet's been doing a better job of that. Again, sort of an unheralded, piece, because you're not looking up the flashy sort of receiving stats, but that's fine. Everybody needs to contribute. Wide receivers need to block in this offense, or else it won't work. Obviously, the linemen have to do their part, and even role players like Cole Kmet at this point need to contribute. And when they do, you see those big gains. I, like you, was surprised at best to see Swift sort of back in the mix as the primary guy. I would have figured there would have been a greater nod to Monagai, especially on the inside runs. I'd still love to see that. I'd love to see Monagai start the game early, be physical, start to wear down some of the defenders, then pop some of those big runs outside with Swift. I think that would be even more effective. But I am not the coach of the Chicago Bears. I do not have that paycheck or that responsibility. So they will continue to figure it out. And it's not like Swift wasn't productive, but I just feel like, what are we leaving Monagai on the bench for that long after we've seen that he can produce behind this offensive line, really without any changes. Same five in front of him, same guy. He's healthy. Why would you take that sort of weapon off the field? They have their reasons. We'll see if they're just sort of saving him for later in the season. I would like to see that workload continue to increase, like Loveland, like Burden. So good to see the rookie class contributing on offense. I think it's the best case scenario for the Bears. All right. Are we going to play Northwatch in the middle before we start talking about Vikings games? Feel like that's probably pretty appropriate to do.
Yeah, I think so. Before we do, just one thing that you mentioned that on the Jalen Johnson and the Kyler Gordon one, I was looking at this because I was trying to estimate like when is a good landing spot for Jalen Johnson. So I was
yesterday, day before.
So I was talking to some of the reporters that will be around at Hallis Hall, and nobody knows the exact date, but everybody just kind of says December for Jalen Johnson. Like, if he's going to come back, it's December time, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the home game against the Packers, because the game after that, he would have 9 days rest. So that coming back after a game, you have plenty of time, and then you play, I think it's the 49ers and then the Lions. Look, I think the key in terms of the focus is probably needs to be on Kyler at the moment, because Jalen, if he comes back, it's a bonus, because I think everybody thought when it happened it was a lost season, where he was done. But and this is why it's so important, if you can get a couple of wins, even if at the very least, if you end up sneaking your way into the playoffs and he can play in a playoff game, that's where this could mean a lot more than him being able to make it back for the end of a season. Because if you somehow get into the playoffs this year, having Jalen Johnson back allows Dennis Allen to do a lot of things that he's not allowed to do right now, because he knows the limitations. So yeah, it's fun to think. It would be great to be able to see him come back, because by God, do they need it. Like, they really, really do. It would be such a good thing to happen. But look, let's see. As you said, it's a good time to, I think, put in Northwatch, because it was a very interesting week in the NFC North, and I think it's just going to get even more interesting. And there's a particular part of Northwatch that I can't wait to hear. So let's play it.
All right.
North and never give it back.
Hi, this is Arif Hassan with Wide Left Football, here with your Northwatch update on the Minnesota Vikings. And as you expect, the update isn't positive about the Vikings. They lost to the Baltimore Ravens. I think this was an expected result. The Ravens were favored by 4.5, maybe even 5. They lost by 8 points, technically a one-score game, and they lost for the reasons that you would expect them to. The offense didn't hold up. The defense was actually pretty stellar, despite the Ravens ending up with 27 points over 13 drives. This is well below the average Lamar Jackson has been able to produce with the Ravens over the past 3 years, or even this season. So a good defensive performance, but just cratered by the fact that McCarthy was inaccurate, held onto the ball too long, didn't go through his progressions with enough fluency, and just really couldn't get the offense set up. The story of the game for many Vikings fans is the fact that they had 8 false starts in a home game. Now, they'll have to resolve the operational errors. They've had operational errors throughout the season, whether it was Wentz or McCarthy under center, and it doesn't look like the Vikings have a lot of hope for the future. Now, technically, they could still make the playoffs. I think realistically, whether or not they, through some quirk of the NFC scheduling, make the playoffs, I just don't see them meaningfully threatening any of the good teams in the NFL. That said, they've got a game coming up against the Bears, and the Bears, despite coming off of a couple of great games for Caleb Williams, are a vulnerable team. So this could be a game where the Vikings could reset themselves, establish themselves as one of the competitors in the NFC North. We'll see, but until then, there's not much positive here in Vikings land.
All right, everybody, Nick Bumgarner here with your weekly Lions update. As usual, the Lions bounce back from a tough loss with a very impressive performance, but this time, some interesting spice in the mix here, we'll say, as Dan Campbell takes back the play calling duties from John Morton, and the Lions have their most efficient day offensively against a bad team in Washington. But the Lions have their most efficient day of the season offensively and really do look like the team that we've seen in the past years. This game also confirms, by the way, for anyone paying attention, that Dan Campbell is the one who built the Lions offense, not Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson evolved the Lions offense and turned it into something more. But what happened in this game is we saw the Lions offense go right back to what we saw in 2021 and 2022 when Dan Campbell took play calling away from Anthony Lynn, and then eventually, in time, handed it off to Ben Johnson, who then continued what Campbell had started and took it off for more. So very interesting stuff. I think Dan Campbell's going to be the Lions play caller for a good minute here. He's been very good at it. He doesn't talk about this stuff very often in public. I think he likes people thinking he's stupid and kind of a meathead, but he's actually a pretty good play caller and a pretty smart guy. So I think this will continue. And I think John Morton will be a sort of, as he's been with Sean Payton in the past and Jim Harbaugh, a bit of a consigliere. Can I say that right? I don't know. Either way. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Next week, Lions-Eagles heavyweight fight. We'll see how it goes. Thanks so much.
I'm starting to think I was asked to do this show because you knew that the Bears would be good and the Packers would not. What is going on? The Bears are sitting at second place in the NFC North while the Packers are sitting in third. Everything is upside down. But let's talk about the Packers. Their defense looks really darn good. And Micah Parsons came out after the game and said, listen, we play like this, we're going to win a lot of football games, and I don't disagree with him. The problem is the offense. Matt LaFleur's play calling, especially on that 4th and 1 play call, was horrendous. Jordan Love turned the ball over. Our offensive line can't block. Elton Jenkins just fractured his freaking leg. And yeah, there's some things to clean up. And here's the thing with the Packers. We're about to figure out what kind of team they are as they're about to go through the NFC North gauntlet very soon after this Giants game. They're going to be taking on the Vikings, then the Bears, then the Lions. And so within this next month and a half, we're about to find out what the Packers are this 2025 season. Their defense, again, playing well. Special teams, we need to send in the substitute teacher. And the offense, yeah, everything needs to get better. But other than that, great week.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong about why I asked him to do it. I love Tom Grassi. I think he's amazing. And I hoped again, come on, Bears fan versus Packers fan. That hasn't been a fair fight for 10 years. But yes, I hoped that things would go right and we would get a few of these North watches. And, thanks to Arif and Nick as well. They have been stalwarts every week, keeping us up to date on what's going on around the NFC North. And I thought Nick's comments were really interesting about Dan Campbell and the play calling. I think he's right. I think Dan Campbell very much likes people to think he's one way when he's actually not that way. He is very sly. He's very sharp. And the Lions offense looked optimized with him calling it, which is saying something because they've been a strong team this year anyways. Arif, thinking of the Bears as a vulnerable team, sure, that might be old thinking at this point, given where they are in their relative matchup with the Vikings. But again, thanks to all the Northwatch guys every week for keeping us up to date. We really do appreciate it. I want to start off the talk about the Vikings game in particular with a graph I found, which I shared with you guys before we got on here, which is really interesting. And this is the probability here, how each team's probability for the playoffs changes depending on whether or not they win or lose just their next game. So in this case, this is the Bears looking at the Vikings. They have they're in the middle of this graph in terms of playoff probability first. And secondly, they have one of the biggest swings. It is 35% if they lose to the Vikings. If they win versus the Vikings, it's 66%. So we're talking about 1/3 chance to make the playoffs or 2/3 chance to make the playoffs. That is a huge swing on a game that looks pretty winnable. And again, because it's a division game, that is one of the reasons that the swing is so large. It is one of the largest swings on this entire graph. The only one I can see that's bigger is the Jaguars. If they lose, it goes to 24%. If they win, it goes to 60.
Whoa.
So, yeah, they have a very long line on this graph, but the Bears are one of the bigger swings coming up this week. Again, because they have a divisional game against a team they're close with. Again, Vikings 4-5, but only 1-3 at home. Arif talked about taking false start penalties at home. Not typical for teams other than the Bears. Bears have just taken a lot of false start penalties everywhere, home and the road. But Minnesota, he said the Bears might be a vulnerable team. I feel like the Vikings are a very vulnerable team right now. If the offense does not kick into gear, and it didn't the first time against the Bears either. This was J.J. McCarthy's first start. He did not play well for almost 3.5 quarters in that game. Ended up turning it on at the end for a couple of drives. They win the game, but played poorly in the game after that, then was injured many games, came back, played exceptionally well in his first start back. In his second start, which was last week, did not play well, kind of sputtered, and the offense sputtered with him. And that makes me feel like the Vikings are a more vulnerable team. Now, it could be the kind of week-to-week thing that we're seeing with like Rome Odunze, where he'll have an off week, do almost nothing, and then come back the next week, look like gangbusters, every bit like a number one receiver. So hopefully McCarthy has a 2-week lull, not a 1-week lull. But again, the Vikings 4-5, 1-3 at home. This is not a particularly strong team that's steamrolling along right now. And the Bears, despite not being pretty every week, are getting it done. They have rolled off a bunch in a row for the first time in forever. And it feels to me like, although this game feels pretty even on paper, if I had to give somebody a nod, it wouldn't be the home team.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because the Vikings are a team here where the Bears go in there. If they win, you essentially kick the Vikings out of contention in the division because they would go 3 games behind you.
Yeah, their chances, by the way, if they lose this game, go to 5%.
Not surprised. That was the figure that in my head I was thinking it was going to be about there. But also, as you said, they've been poor at home. I've seen the Vikings up close and personal. I saw them against the Steelers in Dublin this year, and they looked like a bad team that day. Granted, J.J. McCarthy did not play. It was Carson Wentz, but they looked like a bad team, and they were lucky to still be in that game at the end. The interesting storyline additional to that is it's likely that Jonathan Grenard will not be playing this week. The expectation was that he was going to miss a week. So if that happens, that is one of their stalwarts on defense that caused a lot of problems in the week 1 matchup for the Bears. Now it'll be interesting to see what happens. Does he fight through it and try to play this week? Or as it was reported, I think it was yesterday or the day before by Adam Schefter, that the expectation is that he would be out for 1 week. But also that J.J. McCarthy was limited today because of a injury to his hand, and for a guy that has not been performing at a very high level, an injury adding on to that, knowing that you're probably going to come up against a team that will blitz you and will, because that's the one way they're going to get pressure, it is going to be very, very interesting to see, as you said, what J.J. McCarthy you're going to get. Will you get the guy that for the vast majority of the season has looked every bit like a rookie out there? And that's what the Bears need to do. They need to make him look like a rookie and allow your offense to try and score earlier to give you a lead to where the defense can be a little bit more aggressive. If you can do that, you'll put a lot of pressure, because that's a Vikings team that if they go down early and if you get into a lead at halftime, the pressure is going to ramp up for that team. And yeah, it's a it's an interesting one. I don't particularly think that the Bears is a wounded team because they're finding ways to win. Even though they're not playing very well, the confidence level amongst the team is very evident. They believe when they're in a game at the very end that they're going to win. And sometimes that is more important than anything else because most games are close. Most games come down to 1 or 2 plays in the fourth quarter. Really, the only times it doesn't is when you are outmatched by a far superior team, which really there's only about 4 in the NFL this year. You saw what the Eagles and the Packers did. That's the same Packers team that lost to the Carolina Panthers the week before. A Carolina Panthers team that got smacked this week. So it's one of those that I genuinely think that the Bears, all they need to do is be steady. You don't have to do anything like crazy in this game. Just do your job. You don't have to go above and beyond. You do that and you'll be able to win. And I kind of see the division in that way. Like I know the division looks close, but it won't be. I think the Lions are going to run away with this division because they are one of those teams that are far superior. That on most weeks you can probably jot them down as they're going to win. They've had a couple of bad performances to why they are 6-3. But ultimately, I think they're going to end up being the winners of this division and by a couple of games. But watching Green Bay and watching Minnesota, like they don't come across as like these daunting games you're going into because both of those teams have not looked very good. Like, granted, Green Bay's defense, their defensive line, I'm not going to say their defense because they have problems in their secondary as well. But the problem is for them is they're blaming their head coach for all of their problems. The problem lies at the feet of their quarterback that they're paying $255 million. He has not played well enough. He's making very silly mistakes and he's throwing some balls that if you do that in a close game, you will lose, and that's what they've seen, and that's ultimately what ends up losing you a football game. It's why they lost to the Carolina Panthers. He wasn't good enough against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are also a team that are very week to week. One week look very good, another week they don't. Maybe the Bears can get lucky in that week that they might struggle when the Bears have to come up against them. But it's one where on paper the schedule looks daunting, right? But like, there's not many teams. I don't think there's going to be many teams on the Bears' remaining schedule that are going to win by like 15 to 20 points over the Chicago Bears team. The one team I see that for is the Detroit Lions at the end if they have something to play for, because they are that good. The rest of the teams, like, you've seen it. Like, the Bills beat the Chiefs 2 weeks ago, and then they get smacked around by the Miami Dolphins. Like, this is a week-to-week basis. The Bears, this team, have been pretty good at squashing some of the demons that they've had to deal with. They did it against the Washington Commanders this year. They're probably still going to be hurting when they have to look back at the tape of week 1, knowing that they should have won that game. So I'm very confident going into this week, more so than I ever am for a divisional matchup, because there's a lot of things pointing in the favor of the Bears, and all they have to do now is limit the mistakes. If they limit the mistakes, they'll win this football game. And that's a good position to be in, because in the past, you've had to go above and beyond in these divisional games to say you have a chance to win. So that just kind of shows where this team is and the trajectory of the Chicago Bears versus the Minnesota Vikings right now.
Yeah, it's felt like sledding uphill in past seasons, and if anything, it is level ground or even slightly downhill right now, and that is a new position for the Bears to be in, but a good one. And when you look at the schedule coming up, not to look too far ahead, because Minnesota, you got to take them one at a time, and Minnesota is the next one up on the docket. But after that, it's Pittsburgh, then Philadelphia, as you said, Green Bay, then Cleveland, and Green Bay again. So there's a bit of a sort of up and down here as we talk about this schedule. We both think they have a pretty good shot against the Vikings, I think they've got a pretty good shot against Pittsburgh for multiple matchup reasons. Philadelphia, going to be a tough challenge, a very good team. Green Bay, going to be a tough challenge. They're a very good team as well. Neither of those teams unbeatable. We saw that when they played each other this last week. Cleveland, they should beat Cleveland pretty handily. I'm not going to couch that one. They see Green Bay again for the second time in 3 weeks, which is always tough because you've got a very recent book on the team you just played. Then San Francisco, and then 18 is a flex game versus Detroit. But, again, so each week it's kind of, oh, you can beat them. Oh, that's going to be a tough game. Oh, you can beat them. So looking at that and trying to predict any sort of outcome for the end of the year is pretty difficult right now, but it starts with Minnesota. You got to beat Minnesota. It is one of the winnable games on that stretch. And if you can, again, stack a few more wins, you're putting yourself in a really good position, both for playoff seeding and playoff probability, quite frankly. Any division win you can pick up. I don't care whether it's versus Minnesota or anybody else. It's the toughest division in football in terms of wins and losses. Every team is pretty solid. If you can pick one up here, it's really 2 for 1. So that's exciting to look forward to. Want to shout out Paul Spencer for his super chat. Keep up the great work. We will try. That's our intention. If the playoffs started today, of the realistic teams to make it, who would the Bears match up well against? That's a great question. Obviously involves several different crystal balls working in unison to figure out like who's going to make it, who's going to be healthy, whatever else. Who do they match up really well against in the NFC? Look, Philadelphia is going to win the East for sure. The Seahawks are going to win the West unless the Rams knock them off this next week down in SoFi. Then that gets really interesting because they're very close and they're both powerful teams. But if the Seahawks win that game on the road, that pretty much seals up the West unless they completely fall off the wagon. So we're looking at Philadelphia, Seattle, Tampa's going to win the South for sure. And then obviously the North, they would be probably a wild card team. I don't think they're going to overtake Detroit. That would be silly. Well, I wouldn't say it's Seahawks right now because the Seahawks are a freaking train for the past couple of weeks. If you don't watch Seahawks football, they have blown their opponents off the field in the first quarter and a half for the last 2 straight weeks. Basically,
they've been the best team in the NFC the last few weeks.
I think they're the best team in the NFL right now. If you're talking about the strong teams, like even the typical powerhouses from the AFC, if you put the Seahawks and say the Colts right now, Colts are leading the AFC along with the Patriots. If you put the Colts or the Patriots on a neutral field against the Seahawks right now, it's not close. I'm taking the Seahawks. They have been pounding on teams for a couple of weeks now. So again, if they can survive the Rams, I wouldn't say the Seahawks are a great matchup. I think Philly could be. Tampa is kind of built to give them problems, but I think their chances against Tampa might be better, if that makes any sense. Stylistically, schematically, Paul, I think the Bucs present some unique problems for the Bears. But I think their chances against maybe a banged up Tampa team would be maybe the best out of the NFC contenders that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think Philly and Tampa are the 2 teams that I think you can drag down into a fight versus the worry about Seattle is they fly all over the place on offense. On defense, they have multiple guys that can get after your quarterback. They can cover. They're opportunistic, like you said. I think right now you give the nod to the Seahawks to represent the NFC, with the caveat that the Rams are also a team that on their day could very well beat you.
I mean, if you look at that, it's like you take division winners, right? And let's just say it's Detroit, Philly, Tampa Bay, and let's just say it's Seattle for now. That's the 4 NFC division winners. Then you got a couple more teams coming in as wild cards, right? And Bears could be one. Rams certainly look like they're going to be one.
Then it's Packers or 49ers, because
Yeah, I'd say probably
After
Packers.
that, it is Carolina, and I think
Yeah, so
the
maybe
cutoff
Packers
point is
if
the 49ers.
yeah, if the Packers, sneak in as the lowest wild card team again, 3 teams from one division in the playoffs would be
Mad.
something else. But at that point, maybe Bears Packers for a third time in the year would be kind of crazy.
I do
It's
think we
happened
match
before.
up quite well to them.
Yeah, in terms of, if you're talking about like who would you knock off, I wouldn't say it's the Rams because the Rams present some real problems for the Bears. The Hawks are a terrible matchup because they pass so well, especially on the outside. And right now, the Bears are incredibly weak on outside corner. So not great. Philadelphia has that ability, but they don't use it very much. Same thing with Tampa Bay. They tend to go more inside on their passing game, but they've been getting production out of Tez Johnson for a couple of weeks. So who knows? But yeah, Packers, I would say with their lack of outside receiving threats, it's kind of Christian Watson versus the world matchup. I would say the Bears match up well with the Packers. So maybe that's the best answer. But either way, thanks for the super chat, Paul. Deeply appreciate it. And there was another question from Eric Bono farther up that I wanted to answer because I was doing some stats for Bootleg today. And the Bears outside corner situation is bad. It's literally the worst in the league in terms of NFL passer rating allowed, which is not great. So where is it? There you go. Eric Bono. Which single missing defensive player do you think makes the biggest defensive impact? JJ, Gordon, or TJ? For the beginning of the season, when other folks were healthy, I would have said Kyler because Kyler plays. He's a great sort of 4-way player in the slot. You can use him as a force player. You can use him in the run fit. You can use him as a blitzer. You can disguise. He can cover fast guys out of the slot. He can cover tight ends pretty well. He's just so multiple on defense that to me, that was the biggest impact. JJ is a better football player, like overall. Like his role is more narrow, but he's also better at it. He's one of the top 10 to 15 cornerbacks in the entire league. I would say closer to top 10 than top 15 for the last 3 or 4 years. And he can shut down half the field. And Dennis Allen's defense, when he has a guy like that, when Marshawn Lattimore was super healthy, used him the same way. Hey, Marshawn, you take that guy. I'm going to worry about this other 2/3 of the field with all the other defenders because I don't have to worry about you and your matchup. Jalen Johnson gives you that kind of player, gives you that kind of resource on defense to say, hey, there's our best receiver. You're on him. I'm not worried about it. I'm going to take we're basically splitting the field into thirds. Your third is that guy over there, and I'm going to use everybody else to patrol the other 2/3. That gives a defensive coordinator a lot of options. So he's kind of a force multiplier in a way that's different than Kyler, but also possibly more valuable, again, when you're coming up against a JSN, when you're coming up against a Puka Nacua, when you're coming up against an AJ Brown who can break a game open if the Eagles would throw him the ball. You just put Jalen Johnson on the guy, and he's probably not going to kill you. He might get his yards. He might rack up some decent stats totals, but he's not going to break it open for a 2-touchdown, 150-yard game and just blow you off the field. Like, that's not going to happen. So JJ is incredibly valuable that way. And if he can come back healthy for that stretch run, it feels very much like that scene from The Princess Bride, right? Well, I know something you do not know. I am not left-handed. Ta-da! We have a Jalen Johnson. Let's go. That would be a lot of fun. So I would say Jalen Johnson for me to answer Eric's question.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's
Yeah.
I
He's
think you
locked
can.
down.
I think you can get by with. Kyler's great. He does a lot of things for this defense. The way CJ Gardner-Johnson has played, and if Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker stay healthy, you can get by with CJ being your slot. You can't compete in the playoffs if Nashawn Wright is your outside corner. And ultimately that's what would happen. But again, when it comes to playoffs, for me, it's a turning point if the Bears just make it to the playoffs. Like, if they make it into the playoffs, I'm not expecting anything really. I think that's just like, it's just like a confirmation of what you're doing is correct. And then it's really, you build on that. And the one thing I've been talking about all week is if the Bears make it to the playoffs, you're going to start to see some players want to join this team and want to take part here, where you've seen guys that, like I said, like CJ Gardner-Johnson was on his couch and he comes in and has an impact, and you see and it's weird because this has not been the case for a very, very long time. Even him talking about it, it's like the culture of the team has like completely flipped this year.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do, and the only way of doing that is winning football games. And that's why it was so important that no matter how they do it, that they win, because that changes how a team views the organization, and it'll change how people from the outside and players from the outside will view this organization. There will be players on offense that will want to come and play in Ben Johnson's offense. There'll be players that will want to play in Dennis Allen's defense. If you can say that, but also add to the fact that their first year they made the playoffs, like that's a multiplier there. So that's where I think it's very important in terms of, I think just Jalen Johnson would make the biggest impact if he came back. Like TJ, obviously, he's played quite well when he's been out there. Again, he's a player you can get by if he's not there. It'll look worse, but you can get by. It's radically different when you have a corner like Jalen Johnson back there, because, like I said, it allows Dennis Allen to be aggressive, which right now he's choosing when to be aggressive. That's not what Dennis Allen is like. He wants to be aggressive 80% of the time, but you can tell they don't trust their outside corners, and they shouldn't.
Yeah, they shouldn't.
They have played awful. So that's the difference. Like, I know we're going to talk about, like, when it comes to the offseason, like pass rushers and things like that. Like, don't be surprised if they sign a pass rusher and be like, no, we need to go get a corner in the draft, or vice versa. They're going to address both of those, because even with Jalen Johnson back, even with Terrell Smith back, and Tyreek Stevenson being there, like, Tyreek has been out there and he's had some good games, but you need more. You need more.
Well, they have one too. They've got Zay Frazier. He's not there, but he's the invisible man, and boy, would he be useful this year, because is he a world beater? He's not. Is he a promising young corner with some great physical attributes who was ascending in his final year of college? He was, and again, he's just not available to the Bears this year. That corner group, when you just talk about Terrell Smith back from injury, Tyreek Stevenson, Jalen Johnson healthy, Kyler Gordon, and Zay Frazier, like, I'm fine. That's great. That's a solid cornerback room. Would I add to it? Sure, I'd add to it. But would I go pay big dollars in free agency? No. Would I use one of my top draft picks? Probably not. I would look for, again, the second round is a pretty decent sweet spot for outside corners and wide receivers. The hit rate in the second round is, for wide receivers, is better in the second round than it is in the first round. Corners is about even, but you can still find talented guys there that can hang outside, and you don't have to pay that premium. So it's just unlucky that, again, Zay had an issue that keeps him off the field. Terrell Smith gets hurt early on. Again, I don't think Terrell Smith's a world beater, but as my corner 4, I would take it right now. And you can't get it. So they're doing the best they can. It's not that they didn't plan. It's that they've had a really bad run of luck with injury at corner, and it's showing up, and teams are exploiting it. NFL is merciless. If you have a weakness, they will just stick their finger right into it and squirm it around until they beat you, because that's how it is. Until you prove that you can buck up and stop something in the NFL, people will just do it to you over and over again. So
yeah,
it's one
like
of those
the Bengals
things.
Defense where the Bears knew they could run on them, right? Like, you're just going to keep attacking it all the time. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the story that came out was the end of last week that the Bears almost traded for Alontae Taylor.
They were trying for sure. And I think if the price was right, they probably would have, because he has familiarity with Dennis Allen, so he would have been up to speed really quickly. He's very physical. He's long. He plays press. Like, the book on him coming out in college was that he was like long and really wanted to mess it up. Like, he wanted to get into wide receivers' faces too much. It was penalized for that, was sort of over aggressive physically, had to tone it down, figured it out, but has kept that physicality, has kept that edge. And I know Dennis Allen loves that. And it would have been, again, if the price was right, I think they probably would have. But I think the Saints probably wanted what I would call fair value for Alante. They weren't just selling him to sell him in terms of draft capital. And they wanted fair return for the player who's good, who's talented. And the Bears just said, again, this is more of a rental for us than it is a long-term buy.
Yeah, so that's why I think I wouldn't be surprised if they go and dip back into that well when it gets to the offseason, where I believe he's a free agent this upcoming offseason.
There will be some decent ones. The only I happened to look for a show earlier this week at the free agent market, projected again free agent market without guys getting resigned for wide receiver. Oh boy. If you don't have wide receivers, you're not getting them in free agency this year, folks. Nope. I'm telling you, it is barren. Like it's tumbleweeds. It's bad.
It was
news.
like what 2 years ago when Jacoby Myers was the top wide receiver. It's worse than that.
It's Jacoby Myers again, but 2 years later, which he's a free agent. I don't think that Jacksonville's going to re-up him, but he's the best, and it's 2 years later. It's gotten even lower than that. So there will be some corners. There always are. They'll be expensive in free agency, and that's a consideration for the Bears as well, because they're not made out of money this offseason. They do have cap space, but they are going to have to be judicious with how they use it. So, all right. Wow. Another super chat from Eric Dodge, $9.99. I'm preparing myself for a bumpy back half of the season, but long term. When was the last time you were this optimistic about the future of the franchise? 1984, ever. Being a fan since I would say about the middle of 1983 is when I kind of settled on the Bears, and there have been times I've been pretty hopeful before, but in terms of sustained success, I really do like the job that Ben Johnson is doing on multiple levels, not just the offense. Like, obviously the offensive success is extreme. The Bears have been middling on offense for a long time. They are now a top 10 offense right now in the NFL and looking to get better. I very much believe that if they continue to invest and, they don't suffer any major injuries, they could be top 5 in the NFL next year. And I kind of actually expect that, which is bananas to say as a Bears fan. But that part I'm extremely hopeful about. I also like his coaching staff. We talked about this in the summer when he assembled it after he was hired, and how much we thought that was going to matter, down to the position coaches, guys that have been coordinators before that are now position coaches on this staff. Again, they wanted to be here. They wanted to be working under Ben in his first head coaching job. And you said a thing about, in terms of winning, it also, the guys that are on the roster, I think about guys like Jalen Johnson. And if this team's like 3-6, 3-7, he's working to come back, but he's not sprinting to get back to be part of this team in December. Now, if they make the playoffs and he's a difference maker and he can come in and play hero, he is absolutely pedal to the metal to try and get back on this team. And so it's not just the allure of people outside the franchise wanting to come play. That will happen as well. But guys within the franchise giving their all and everything to get back and to scrap and to play every game because they know they can be part of something special. So overall, just having an offense, the NFL is so geared to offense right now, Eric, in terms of the rule set and how it's officiated and, how everything is called and built basically from the ground up. If you don't have offense, you're not surviving in this league. The Bears haven't had offense forever, so they've kind of been a foregone conclusion in terms of wins and not getting them, because they have an offense that sort of just buoys my optimism as high as it's been in a while, because it looks like it's being built the right way and is sustainable. The quarterback is there, which is obviously the biggest wild card in any franchise. If you don't have it, you're not going anywhere. If you think you have it, you might be there. And yeah, they have the quarterback, they have the coach, and they already have success, and they're not even as good as they can be. I am pretty darn happy about that. A bumpy back half of the season for sure. We just talked about it. It's going to be a roller coaster. You're going to probably win one at least game out of Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Philly, tough challenge, Green Bay, tough challenge. You're probably going to win against the Browns, back against Green Bay. I think you can take the game from San Francisco, especially late in the year. They have been absolutely beset by injuries. And then Detroit might rest their starters. That might be a quote unquote free-ish win for the Bears. So anything could happen. Is it going to be up and down? It is. But I think it's going to be fun. And, you know, we do have this hope going forward. So great question, Eric. Thank you very much for the super chat. We'll be here chronicling the entire thing. And I got to say, it's a whole lot more fun this year than it was last year, Kieran.
Yeah, the quote or the movie quote that comes to my mind when you were speaking there is, "Are you not entertained?"
Yeah, it's coming.
It is.
Well, I mean, come on. Jameis is a starting quarterback this week. Are you not entertained? Like for the Giants, we're going to see it. Yeah, it's coming back.
The Giants are going to beat the Packers this week. But anyway.
Oh, I sure hope so. That would be fun. Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. If that happens.
It's a typical Jameis game where they each throws and they get like 30 points and they win.
If that happens, y'all, come back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel for North Watch, because I will guarantee you that I make Tom Grassi mea culpa about James. He loves James, by the way, but if James puts it to his Packers, oh, that will be delicious. I will love it. So you might
see a tear being shed on North Watch next week.
More than one.
Yeah, it's to me, it's the first time in a long time that I felt positive long term about a team. For multiple reasons, I like the coach. I believe what he puts in place and you follow what the coach is going to do is correct. Like, I know people talk about like some of the other false dawns, like in 2018. I didn't really believe in that team long term. I knew the defense was fantastic and Vic Fangio was great, but you also knew the next year Vic Fangio was going to be gone. So you knew that was short lived and that they had to kind of take advantage there. Like that year, the Bears ranked 21st on offense. Like this year, they are in the top 10 in pretty much every offensive metric, and they've looked okay. It's been up and down, and they are still in the top 10, and that just goes to show you what they've been able to accomplish. They haven't been perfect, but what's going to happen when that really does click into gear? That's when you're going to see a team that every Bears fan is going to be incredibly proud of and be very excited on a weekly basis just to watch the team, because then you don't have to be perfect on defense. If your offense can score at will and can put up the yards, your defense can take a little bit of a step back and not be a top 10 ranked defense. You can be, if you're in the top 15, 16, 17, you'll win more games than you'll lose. And it's coinciding with one or two of the teams in the division kind of struggling versus the expectation. So it's a really, really nice time. I think long term, it's the first time in a while that you can talk about liking your quarterback, liking your coach, and believing that, and also at this point, still having the capital you need to be able to move forward. Like when the Bears won a lot of games in 2018, they didn't have their first round draft picks for the next 2 years. So like there was still, if something didn't work, there was a limitation to how you were going to be able to improve. That's not the case here. You can, if there's a position group that you know you need to fix, like if you need to fix the opposite edge rusher to Montez Sweat, well, you have the opportunity to do that because you'll have your first round draft pick and you'll have your second round draft pick. So that's what's really cool about it. I think any team that feels good about their coach and their quarterback, their future will look bright. And I think that's exactly the position that the Bears are in right now.
Yeah, and you've got that mesh between, like you said, coach and quarterback, but you also have some other very expensive positions taken care of. Right tackle is just as important as left tackle in the modern NFL. You've got a very good young right tackle. You've got a number one wide receiver you've got a number one corner for right now. You'll figure that out. Those are some of the most expensive positions. You've got ostensibly a number one edge rusher. One more question I want to take. Actually, it's a combination of two questions before we get out of here. One is, what edge rushers will Dennis be looking at in the draft? And the other one was asked earlier about, how do you feel about the safety position? Brisker, injury, Byard getting older. I'm going to kind of mash those two questions together and say the good news is the Bears probably aren't going to have a very high draft pick, which is fine this year because it's not a very limited class for edge rusher. It is a very, very deep. In fact, edge might be the deepest position in this draft. Early estimates are that 15 or so of the top, somewhere between 45 and 60 players will be edges. That's an embarrassment of riches at a position that the league is traditionally very, very hungry for. So even if we're not talking about guys like Reuben Bain and Arvell Reese and the guys that are going to go off the top of the board, the Bears are going to have options, even if it is at the bottom of the first round, without having to trade up and go, boy, if we don't get in the top 15, we're not getting an edge rusher. No, they're going to be able to sit wherever they're at, 20, 22, wherever their pick ends up, and still get a good player who can complement Montez Sweat and bring them some pass rush juice on the other side. Same thing with safety. There is some real talent at safety. In fact, there is probably a safety that's going to get drafted top 10, possibly, might be the best player in this draft. Now, are the Bears going to go after him? No, I wouldn't advocate for that, but are there safeties behind him that you can get in the second round? Again, in the third round? Yes. Do they need to? Yeah, I thought they needed to this year because not a very deep position for the Bears, and certainly not a young position if you're looking at not necessarily only years, but also injuries. There's not a lot there if either of the starters go down, and they need better. But they can do that in, I would say, lower rounds of the draft than edge rusher. Very typically, if you're getting a top edge rusher, you got to get him in the first round and a half. Like history says, the guys with the traits are going to be off the board by then. Bears have a pick in that range, and they will have multiple choices in this particular draft. So that's good news for the Bears. They definitely need more pass rush. I'm with you. They also definitely need safety help. So thanks for the questions this week. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all of our Northwatch contributors. Thanks to our sponsors, Blue Wire Podcast, Homage Clothing. Thanks to Mike running everything behind the scenes and running the chat like a boss. We always appreciate that. Kieran, what do you got before we get out here this week?
Well, before we do get out, we will play.
Oh, we got Mike on the mic.
Mike on the mic, so we can't forget that. But
No,
to what you
that's
said,
cool.
there's going to be Bears fans that are enjoy all the wins here, enjoy playing well, but don't freak out too much when there's going to be guys you're going to love in the draft that you're just not going to be in a position to go and get. Like when
No shot.
You
Yep.
mentioned some of them, like Reuben
Yep.
Bain. He's
Yeah.
the way he's going.
He's going top 5.
Top 5 easy. Yeah. Caleb Downs, you mentioned it. You're
Top
gonna
10.
when it comes to like, I look at this and I'm just like, what will Dennis Allen do? Like, I don't think you're gonna go like you're pure like edge rusher. Like you look at guys like Peter Woods from like Clemson, which are bigger defensive ends, but very versatile. Based on what the Bears have brought in here and what they're doing, like that's the style of guy that they're going to want to get opposite Montez Sweat, just someone with a little bit more pass rush. So those are the type of guys that when we get to that point and going through the edge rushers, because look, obviously in the off season it'll be one of the key positions. We'll probably end up doing a stream that's purely talking about the edge rushers, and we'll go through all of that stuff. But like, don't get too fixated on some of these guys early on here, because the Bears may not be able to go and get some of your favorite guys, but as you said, in some of the positions that they need to address, there's a nice amount of players that are going to be available to them. And we see it every year in the first round. Like there's guys that you see projected into top 12, top 13, and then suddenly they're still there at 21. And you see a good team taking them and they play really well. Like the obvious one is Jared Verse was projected to be like top 10 guy, falls to the Rams, and the rest is history. You've seen guys go in the second round and have been really, really good. So it's just about the fit of the defense. But the good thing is some of the key areas that the Bears need to address, it's looking like, now obviously we don't know who's 100% coming out yet, but it looks like the draft is going to shake the way that they may want to be able to address some of those positions. But we'll see. Without further ado, let's hear what Mike had to say this week. Again, very much looking forward to his optimism on a weekly basis, and it helps when the Bears win these football games. So let's see what he said this week.
Thank you, EJ and Kieran, and welcome in, Bears fans, to another edition of Mike on the Mic here on the Bear Era podcast. I'm Mike Mercado. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Now, in the NFL, you never apologize for winning a game, no matter how it looked. So the Chicago Bears are standing tall after beating the New York Giants here in Chicago. But that doesn't mean that the chatter in Bears Nation has been all positivity. There still are glaring holes that are going to cost this Bears team when it matters the most. And coming up is a matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. No better place than now to start fixing those issues. Now, the Chicago Bears have allowed 27.4 points per game. That's 28th in the league. And have allowed 240.3 yards per game. That's 26th in the league. But more troubling, they've allowed 20 passing touchdowns. J.J. McCarthy on the season has passed for 692 yards with 5 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in 4 games. So to me, that just shows that what happened in week 1 in the NFL was more of a fluke than it is consistency. He is still a rookie quarterback that is learning the NFL. So this coming Sunday is a big assignment for Brisker, for Byard, for C.J. Gardner-Johnson, with players like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Hawkinson and Naylor, and you even have the running backs in Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. The secondary, the safeties, the cornerbacks on this Bears team will have the hardest job this coming Sunday, and that is keeping a very talented wide receiver and tight end group with some dangerous running backs in check, and not allowing a rookie quarterback who has already beaten you once in dramatic fashion get comfortable at home. So with all the talented players on the Minnesota Vikings offense, all the injuries in the Chicago Bears secondary, the way the safeties have stepped up and played, the amount of takeaways this defense has had, every Bears fan watching this Minnesota versus Bears Week 11 matchup has one thing circled. How much has this Chicago Bears team grown? How much better is this Chicago Bears team under Ben Johnson after 10 weeks of football? So you ask yourself, what's on the line? Not just redemption for the choke job in week 1 on Monday Night Football. Not just a 7th win, but a win against a talented division rival that puts you one step closer to being a legitimate playoff contender and not just a graphic on the TV screen. I hope each and every one of you enjoys the Chicago Bears taking on the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. Enjoy the entire Week 11 slate. Thank you so much for joining us here on Mike on the Mic on the Bear Era podcast. I'm Mike Mercado. Now back to EJ and Kieran.
I gotta match that level, man. I gotta raise my enthusiasm. I am glad the Bears are winning. I am super glad that Mike's happy about it, and mostly I'm just thrilled that Mike's with us every single week, running the chat, running Mike on the mic like an absolute champ. Can't thank him enough. Can't thank y'all enough for being here with us as well. Hopefully it grows with the Bears' success. We're enjoying it. If you're enjoying it, tell your friends. Tell them to come hang out. Tell them to drop some questions in the chat. We'd be happy to answer them. More the merrier right now. It is, jump on. There's plenty of room on the bus.
Absolutely. It's fun. This is the fact that we've been doing podcasting and content creation for a couple of years now, and this is the first time I remember being able to talk about 6 Bears wins in 7 weeks, folks. Yeah. 6 wins in 7. So anytime somebody tries to say anything critical or negative about your team, just go back with that. You got to watch your team win 6 out of 7. That does not happen very often, and there's no guarantees that you're going to win on a weekly basis. You could go through 4 or 5 weeks without winning. The Bears are on a path to win 4 more games. If you win 4 more games, you're very much in the playoffs. And that's what they need to do. They have 8 games to win 4. And it's very much doable. It's the games within your division you can win. There's games that are not in your division which you will have an opportunity to win. And we said this prior to the Commanders game. If they won that game and then they had a nice slate of games coming up, if you can get to 6-3, your coaching staff can really hammer home that every single game is a playoff game. Because they are. Because you play so many of your divisional games. You're playing a lot of teams in the NFC as well that you're going to be coming up against. So it's like a goldmine for a coaching staff to where they can really make these guys treat everything as a week-to-week process. And that the only thing that matters is the upcoming game. And you celebrate if you win and then you move on. And that's what they've been able to do. And that's how you rock off 6 out of 7. And it feels really, really good as a Bears fan to be able to say that. You don't get to say that very often. Even the best teams in the league often don't get to say that. Look at the Buffalo Bills. They haven't won 6 games in 7. They've lost 2 of the last 3 or 2 of the last 4. Like, even good teams in this league don't get to go through a prolonged period of time of where you win. And that's why I say it each and every week. I tweet it each and every week. Don't care how, don't care why, just win. And that's all that matters. Right now, the most important stat at the end of the day is, did you win or did you lose? And the last 7 weeks, the Bears can say they're on the right side of that 6 out of those 7 weeks. And that's what has me excited as a Bears fan.
You're channeling your inner Al Davis. So, yeah, just win, baby. The Bears keep doing it. We'll be here every week to help you chronicle it and go along with looking forward to the last stretch of the season here, where it could be very important. If you're talking about how excited are you in sort of Bears history, they could do something really, really special here. They already have, but they could put a cherry on top of this particular Sunday, and we'll all be here to see it. So we will be back next week with another Bear Era, talking about how the game went against the Vikings and then looking forward to that game against the Steelers. So we will see you all then, but thanks for joining us and take care.